Welcome to the Cowbell Kingdom Podcast, brought to you by Jiffy Lube. Jiffy Lube, fast and convenient automotive services with over 25 locations in the area. Visit them at jiffylubeka.com for coupons and locations. I am James Ham, and I am joined by one of my favorite guests on the Cowbell Kingdom Podcast. I don't know, you're the Steve Martin or, the Tom Hanks of this show. You've been in more than almost anyone. Mr. Sam Amick of USA Today. Sam, what's going on?
James, what's up, my friend? If only I had those guys thankful. But good to be here, and thanks for having me on.
Hey, it's been wild and crazy up here in Sacramento. I don't know if you've been watching, but all of a sudden I don't have to go and watch 28-win basketball, at least not early in the season. Are you surprised by what's happening up here?
Yeah, very surprised and very happy for Kings fans that have had a couple rough years. It's been so long, since that organization was able to do anything on the court of any substance. And even though you're talking about 5 games, and I think you certainly have to say, okay, it's early, let's see if they can keep it up. But I think this is more than enough for people to enjoy and to soak up, and it's just such a change of pace. What's crazy, James, to me, is that when you're talking about such a small sample size, and I only say that because of this next point, what's remarkable is I keep seeing these stats where it's like, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I saw one yesterday, the Kings hadn't been 3 games above 500 since 2006. And things like that just absolutely open your eyes to how bad it has been for quite some time now. But I think they've got something going here. I mean, the core seems to be playing well. The markets and all that momentum that he got going with Team USA in Spain and the FIFA World Cup, and Rudy being part of that as well. But for me, I guess the early takeaway is that the veterans on this team, some of the ways that G. D'Alessandro and Chris Mullin filled in the gaps on that roster, whether it's Darren Tollison at the point guard spot, Carl Landry coming back from his year, all those little things combined with that core playing well, obviously a good mix right now.
Yeah, you brought up the sort of the records that we're hearing. I mean, the Kings hadn't won 4 games in a row since March 29th of 2011 during the Paul Westphal era. I mean, that's a long time just to get a 4-game win streak. I think a lot of people are caught off guard because this schedule was brutal, and they expected 2-8 or 1-9, or maybe if they're lucky 3-7 to start the season, and they've already got 4 wins. I mean, you look at the road schedule coming up. We've got Phoenix, we got OKC, we've got Dallas, we've got Memphis. How do you think the Kings can fare against those 4 teams?
It'll be tough. Give that to me again. You said Dallas and
Phoenix,
Memphis,
OKC. Yeah, Phoenix, OKC, Dallas, and Memphis.
I mean, that's brutal, but that's also the West. And so that type of schedule is not going away anytime soon. Everybody in the West is facing that kind of a challenge. Of that group, Phoenix, I think, is probably the most gettable game. They've kind of been hit and miss so far this year. Memphis has been absolutely locked in, and then OKC obviously is another one that, pre-Durant and Westbrook injuries, you're thinking they go in there and get run over, but not now. I think that's another one that could win. I just think in general that a team like that forget about even talking about playoffs just yet. I think it is premature for that. But putting together a quality season, it becomes about just stacking up the wins. However you can get them. When you can get 4 in the first 5, and like you said, that's obviously a hell of a lot better than going down that 1-9 road that everybody assumed they would go down. And maybe you start catching some of these teams in the East and keep stacking a few W's on top of what they've already done. But again, the vibe and the fan component for me is the fun part, and that's even with not getting them live just yet. Last night, I was not the Warriors-Clippers fan, and it was kind of fun because on Twitter, the old Kings contingent, in terms of the readers that still follow me on Twitter, had some folks give me a hard time. Like, all right, man, you can go down to Oakland and watch that Warriors-Clippers action. You're missing the with the Kings and the Nuggets in the way the Kings are playing. And, hopefully by the time the Kings get home again, I think it's a Spurs game on the 15th. They've got a good thing going still, and the buzz hasn't disappeared.
Oh, I see. So you're going to show up for the Spurs game because the champs are in town.
Can you blame me, my friend? That one, I was coming either way, But certainly it would be shocking to have that game have any substance to it, because I'm not going to lie to you, James. Professionally, the most challenging part of the last couple of years when it came to going to games in Sacramento was the fact that you're always pulling stories out just from getting access to the visiting team. But the difference had been that when you went to Warriors games, it was a game that mattered most of the time. Whereas in Sac, once you reach that halfway point of the season, if not earlier, the games just simply didn't matter in the grand scheme of things. So again, I hope for their sake they keep it going.
Yeah, I've missed 2 games in 4+ years, so I've watched about 150 something games of this. Realistically, this train wreck. It's been a train wreck over the course of time, and the fans. You're right. The fans do deserve some positive things that are going on. Now I'm going to ask you a question. We've got 2 topics here that we'll work through. Isaiah Thomas. We've had this Isaiah Thomas DeMarcus Cousins beef. From the Sacramento side, when I talked to DeMarcus, he's like, look, I don't know what the beef is. The guy got his money. He went somewhere else. I have nothing to do with player, who gets signed, who doesn't. That's above my pay grade, even though he does make more money than anyone else. But that's his point of view. But from Isaiah Thomas's view, it's almost like he wants to have a chip on his shoulder at all times. That's the way he survives, in the world. Am I off base with that?
You're not, and I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing. It served him well, and he did get that contract that he was going for, and he is in a good situation now with the Suns. They're going to be a good team, but I do think you're dead on that he's just wired that way. And he's not alone when it comes to that type of mentality. You find a lot of athletes, especially guys. Listen, Isaiah is about as undersized as you're going to find, and he's the kind of guy that it's cliche for players to say, I've been doubted, people didn't think I could make it. You hear that all the time. But with a guy like that, it's so true.
Yes.
People didn't think you could make it. And so, that way of thinking is not going away anytime soon. I know I had mentioned to you off air here that I caught up with Isaiah in Phoenix recently and just kind of chatted for a while, and nothing had changed at all when it comes to that way of thinking with him, even in Phoenix. The Suns go out and get Eric Bledsoe. The whole world knows that Bledsoe is the centerpiece of what they're doing. They give him a ton of money. And I asked Isaiah kind of the question that you're alluding to, where I said, are you still wired that way? Do you look at Eric and say, he's got my job? And he kind of laughed. He goes, I'm never going to change. And basically did say, yes. Not that he's gunning for Bledsoe and hoping that he fails, but, he would not argue if Jeff Hornacek gave him that job. And that's just kind of the way he competes.
Yeah, I think we've got that, we understand that as people who have covered Isaiah Thomas for any length of time. I also, the Kings, in their defense to why they made this decision, I think it's a very, very salient point to point out that Isaiah Thomas, he may not like that he's behind Eric Bledsoe, but he respects that he was brought in to back up Eric Bledsoe and that Eric Bledsoe is a very good NBA player. If he was to come back to Sacramento, the Kings didn't believe he would accept a role, and they would have this issue of a schism in the locker room, or they would have this 2 factions, the Isaiah Thomas lovers and then the Darren Collison people. Even the fans would start to pile on one side or the other, and they just thought that it was probably the best that they just move a different way. If they want a different starter, which is what they did want, then moving to Darren Collison and moving away and just letting Isaiah Thomas go somewhere else probably makes the most sense. Do you buy that?
I do, yeah, and I actually understood the move at the time. And as you know, James, that was a move that was mostly criticized. And people look at Collison like a guy that, he obviously backed up Chris Paul with the Clippers last year. And immediately there was talk of him starting in Sacramento, and people didn't understand that. I buy that not only because of the reasons that you mentioned, but also just because I think that locker room and the context that surrounds DeMarcus Cousins is going to be a much better one if they've got more veterans like Darren as part of the program. And that goes for some of the other guys that we already mentioned. Landry, I think, being healthy is big. Reggie Evans, even guys like that, who have actually accomplished a few things. Darren Collison at this time last year was obviously part of the team that was thinking about a championship. I think that seeps into the mentality and the culture and all those things that were not very good for the Kings in the past. So it's a fascinating debate when it comes to Isaiah Thomas and his tenure in Sacramento, because I think the world of him as a player, and I do have a soft spot, like I said earlier, for guys who can beat the odds and do what he's done. I just think that when you have DeMarcus and you got a new guy in Rudy who's going to be a free agent next summer, you just probably couldn't have three guys who want the ball all the time. You're not going to improve that way.
I think everyone has a soft spot in their heart for Isaiah Thomas. He was a joy to cover. All right, let's shift gears a little bit. The Sacramento Kings are 4-1, and it brings up like an interesting dilemma here. How good are they? Are they going to be sustainable? Can they keep this going? And if they can keep this going, at what point do you look at the shooting guard position and say, we're just not good enough at that position right now, and we're a team with larger aspirations, and it's time to go get someone else?
That's a very good question. I think that Vivek Ranadive probably is the guy to ask, and he's the guy who's going to determine the answer to that question. He already went into the year talking big, talking about win-loss record over culture and making it very clear that he wanted results. Honestly, I thought what it was going to lead to was that, Michael Malone's seat was just going to get hotter by the day, and when that team struggled like I thought they would, that he could end up being the fall guy. Now it's obviously going in a different direction, and if they are able to keep it up, then, hey, I think they'll be aggressive when it comes to trying to make the most of whatever moment they've got going on right now, because that two-guard spot is a problem. I think Ben, he's got potential, he's got a high ceiling, but he's not a shooter, and they need shooting, and his developmental curve obviously is a ways off at this point in terms of being a night-in, night-out productive starter and a guy who, if the goal is to get within playoff contention, that's a weak spot. So in terms of what they can pull off, who knows? Jason Thompson, I think you'd probably agree, is widely considered number one likely Kings trade target in terms of going out if there's a market for him. And I don't know what you can get. But Pete and those guys are always active. And I do think that if they could keep this thing going, like I said a minute ago, they're going to try to keep the ball rolling and make some moves.
Yeah, I see that that definitely Jason Thompson, like he came into the season as a major trade piece that they would like to move. But at this point, Derek Williams has slid down sort of the roster so far that he's almost like, going up to Reno to go play for the Bighorns at this point. And, there you have a $6 million contract that's expiring. Maybe you can go get someone like an O.J. Mayo who has a $8 million contract for next season as well in exchange for someone like Derek Williams, just to relieve, Milwaukee of the salary of someone like Mayo. I don't know. I mean, it seems like there might be a deal out there that Sacramento could find to fill that void at the shooting guard position, because it is such a glaring weakness.
So you're right. And in this league and in the West in particular, it's just going to rear its ugly head every single night. I mean, when you've got the James Harden and Klay Thompson of the world on the other side, bench, I think, that's going to have a hard time.
Definitely. All right, Sam. Well, hey, we don't want to keep you all day. Let's just get a quick prediction from you. I mean, they're 4-1 right now. You know what their next 4 games are: Phoenix, Oklahoma, Dallas, Memphis. Then they come back to a 3-game homestand, which just isn't nice at all. Spurs, Pelicans, Bulls. So 7 games. Over the next 7 games, how many wins do you think the Kings get out of those 7?
Oh, see, I thought you were going big picture in terms of the record in general. That's where my mind was going. But the next 7 games, I'll give them 3. I think the road is tough, and some of those teams are really good at home. I'll give them 3, and at that point, you're still going in the right direction, and you get to come home to the comforts of good old sleep train and try to keep it going. But if they could find a way to win 3 or 4 of these games, it should feel pretty good.
Yep, I think Sacramento Kings fans would be very happy with 7-5 or 8-4 coming out of the first 12 games, which again was just completely brutal. All right, Sam. Well, hey, thank you so much for joining me. It's been a while. We've got to do this more often.
Absolutely, and they keep playing this way, man. I'll see you out there soon.
Welcome to this portion of the Cowbell Kingdom Podcast, brought to you by Jiffy Lube. Jiffy Lube, fast and convenient automotive services with over 25 locations in the area. Visit them at jiffylube.ca.com for coupons and locations today. Cowbell Kingdom Podcast, I am James Ham. Joining me in this portion, Mr. Aaron Bruski. Aaron Bruski, do we have anything to talk about?
No, there's nothing to talk about. I think we should probably talk about Jiffy Lube.
Jiffy Lube is spectacular. They are a beacon in the community. I love Jiffy Lube. What they've done to help keep the Sacramento Kings in Sacramento is spectacular. And what they helped retain a team that is now 4-1. Did anyone see this coming, Aaron Bruski?
Yeah, no.
No.
No. Who? I would, if you were the Kings fan that said 4-1, you have it somewhere in writing, send it to me. I will send you a complimentary subscription to my Twitter feed.
That's right. Or an Aaron Bruski coffee mug with Aaron Bruski's face on the side. You have those, right?
Yes, I do.
Yeah. Aaron, I think everyone is shocked. I think the Sacramento Kings are shocked. Michael Malone is shocked. But at the same time, it's not smoke and mirrors. It sure does look like what they're doing is something that you can repeat again and again, which is what we've seen in the last 4 games. I mean, the Sacramento Kings hadn't had a 4-game winning streak since March 29th of 2011. That's part of the 2010-2011 season with Paul Westphal at the helm. That's how long it's been since they've had a 4-game winning streak. Now they go into Phoenix on Friday night to test that 4-game winning streak, and they've got 4 road games in a row. But I think all of a sudden you have to reevaluate who and what this team might be, and you look at a 4-game road trip. I mean, we're talking about Phoenix on Friday, OKC on Sunday. You have to reevaluate who OKC is. Dallas on Tuesday, Memphis on Wednesday. What do you think, Aaron? How did they do in that 4-game road trip?
This has been really tough for me because on one hand, covering the Kings relocation saga every day for like 3.5 years, I grew this respect for Kings fans and empathy where, I really hurt for them, and I wasn't full-time Sacramento at the time. And that's when I really got to know Sacramento and just kind of what an incredible place it is. So I don't want to be the guy that puts rain on the parade.
Be the guy.
But I got to be the guy because ultimately, there's probably listeners that, are going to hold me to this down the road. I think that everything is kind of worked out real well for them. And to their credit, they've taken what the defense has given them, so to speak. But they have come out. It's an organizational change, culture change. It is happening. So it's not all bad news. I'm not going to rain on the parade too hard, but they have come out. It started in summer league. It continued into the preseason. They wanted to win from the first game. And there are teams that spend not 1, not 2, but 3 and 4 weeks treating the first month of the season like a preseason. So they came out, and the Golden State game, I think, was probably just a lot of getting the jitters out. It wasn't a great matchup for Cousins. We talked about that extensively last week. Mm-hmm. But Portland, Damian Lillard was in a 3 or 4 game slump, probably due to an ab strain. The guy just didn't look like himself. Those guys were looking ahead to more important games on the schedule. Then you go to the Clippers. The Clippers looked terrible in that game. I didn't even recognize them, and that's my team that I picked to win it all. And they just got lit into by Doc Rivers last night in hilarious fashion.
That was hilarious. He did say smoke up your butt, right? He did say they're just out there blowing smoke up each other's butts.
Well, it's funny. Spears, he edited that out of his tweet, and then some guy totally took him to task for that, and I was like, come on, guys.
I love Spears.
Denver, they're not even a basketball team right now. First of all, they couldn't handle the Thunder when they had 7 players, and we're talking their C team. And I mean, I know these guys, when you're put in that position, you're going to play hard, and there's the potential for a letdown from a team like Denver. But there's something brewing in there with their coach. They started out like this last year. Fareed checked out for the first third of the season until his contract situation got worked out. There's a lot of guys that want minutes. There's too many duplicative parts at each position. That team is imploding as we speak. And there's just been a ton of, well, look at this schedule and look at how tough these teams are. And Sacramento's done a great job doing what they need to do, but I do question the veracity of the schedule.
Okay, so I'm going to rebuttal these things. Number one, the first game of the season, they were up by 1 with 5 minutes left in the third quarter, and then Ramon Sessions happened. Yeah, he turned the ball over 4 times in the matter of 2 minutes, and the team as a whole, while he was at the helm, turned the ball over, I think, 6 times, and only had 1 shot in like a 2 or 3 minute period, and that shot was missed. So they got blown out there, but they were blown out during a very small window of the game. Portland, I thought the Kings played very well against Portland. I thought Rudy Gay absolutely destroyed Batum. I think that DeMarcus Cousins just gave it to their front line. They had no answer for Cousins. And sure, Lillard struggled. He did have some shots late, but at some point when you look at 4 point guards in a row that Darren Collison, or at this point, I mean five point guards, but one of those point guards twice, Darren Collison has played exceptional defense on. You have to maybe look at it and say maybe he is a good point guard. Now with the Clippers, I'll say this.
Well, I can save you the time there. I actually wrote that he's been playing well and been playing great defense today. So it's not that he's not playing great. The thing about when you look at Lillard and he has a 4-game slump, and it's, there's a couple other constants there that aren't, to sit there and say Steph Curry, and in that game, Steph Curry looked like the worst I've seen him in at least 2 years.
Yeah.
I mean, he wasn't ready to play. And Lillard with his 4-game slump or 3-game slump, whatever it is. I mean, there was people that were really wondering what's wrong with Damian Lillard. That wasn't just a Darren Collison thing. Chris Paul had his foot stepped on by Rudy Gay, had to leave the game. So Collison, didn't get the typical fill of Chris Paul, and he's kind of a weird guy too, because those guys have gone at each other in practice for an entire year.
Well, and Redick was horrible in that game too. I think Redick was 3 of 10 from the 3-point line and bricked. At least 5 of those that he missed were so wide open that could have totally changed the complexity of that game. But that's basketball. Sometimes you miss shots. Now we get to the Monday night game against Denver back to back. And he holds Ty Lawson, the fastest point guard in the league, if I'm not mistaken.
Nope. Ty Lawson has been injured all summer.
Well,
and he has not played. He has not picked up a basketball. I mean, maybe to shoot around a little bit, but his ankle injury was so severe at the end of last year that he had to take the entire summer off. And he looks about 15 pounds overweight.
He does look a little heavy.
So, I mean, this is why I've been like just trying to be as positive as I can be on Twitter and such, because the Kings deserve a ton of credit right now. Mike Malone deserves a ton of credit. The players, DeMarcus Cousins deserves just this inordinate amount of credit. I don't know what's going on there as far as like how does one guy. I mean, this is a guy that if you had to single out somebody who would be the first guy you would deal with in the locker room to try to fix things, he was the guy. Now he is doing everything right on and off the court.
He's bought in.
And Rudy is bought in. Everybody's kind of bought in. And as I wrote today in my column over at rotoworld.com, now we got to see what happens when times aren't so easy. When the other teams start game planning for these guys. The defenses I've seen on DeMarcus are just downright embarrassing. The double teams aren't sharp. They're not trying to get Rudy off of any of his good spots. If you have 2 players on the court in whoever's playing shooting guard, and probably not as applicable to Stauskas as it is to McLemore, and then Jason Thompson, who traditionally, while he looks pretty good right now, traditionally has a tough time handling the ball. If you're not forcing the ball to those guys, you're doing something wrong. And I didn't see any of that in the last 4 games. Most certainly not in the last 2 games when they tried to cover Cousins with Darrell Arthur for like 5 plays one-on-one.
But he destroyed DeAndre Jordan. He destroyed Mozgov. And again, he destroyed Robin Lopez.
And he's going to do that because he's DeMarcus Cousins, the baddest man in the NBA.
Okay, let's ask that question. Is he a superstar?
Yes. He is the best center in the NBA right now.
I think he is. I mean,
it's crazy.
I believe.
It's crazy because you could just go on and on about Joakim Noah or Marc Gasol and their, savvy. In the case of Marc Gasol, it's the thinking man's pick, and Noah is it's terror defensively and a character on the court and
Yeah.
doesn't really have the baggage. But when you just talk about pure, unstoppable mass that nobody has an answer for, that's DeMarcus Cousins.
Yeah, he's averaging 24 points, 10.6 rebounds in 29 minutes a night. And he's going to the line like a ridiculous amount of times. I mean, that's the thing that I look at. He's averaging 9.8 free throw attempts a game. Rudy Gay is averaging 9.2 free throw attempts per game. I mean, these are stats that you've talked about this a couple of times, just like that there aren't guys who average 10 free throws a game. And the Kings, not only are they getting, here's the one thing that I'll point out. Not only are the Kings getting DeMarcus Cousins to the line, I mean, the first game he had 18 free throw attempts. I think he had something like, I don't know, 10 or 11. 11 free throw attempts in Wednesday night's game against Denver. But the team as a whole, almost every night, there's a guy off the bench with 10 free throw attempts. Wednesday night against Denver, Carl Landry, 10 free throw attempts. Ramon Sessions on Monday night, which we'll get to Ramon in a little while, but again, 10 free throws. This team is so aggressive. Not only are they're averaging, I think it's 11 more free throw attempts than their opponent every night, but they're also out-rebounding their opponent by almost 9 rebounds a game. This is like, it's hard-nosed, like old-school New York Knicks basketball. That's what it feels like to me. And you've got, like, New York Knicks-style players on this roster.
Yeah, and if it didn't apply to the Blazers and the Warriors game, I would put it this way. I don't count anything from the Denver games. Those games didn't count because they weren't properly coached on the other side, and the matchups were just terrible. And Rudy Gay could have gone for 40. DeMarcus could have gone for 40 and 20 if they really wanted to. That team rolled over, and Brian Shaw is on the hot seat. Like after this start, unless they have some magnificent turnaround, he'll be on the hot seat by mid-season if this keeps up like that.
Yeah, I don't know if he'll make it to midseason. I mean, I think he's definitely the heat is rising. It's rising.
It's fast. So I mean, yeah, their interior presence, the way that they've constructed the offense right now is just really simple, and it's taking advantage of Rudy's spots, and they're getting the ball into DeMarcus in good spots. And what I would be keying on if I'm a Kings fan is the way that you start to deal with Cousins is you make him a dribbler, you make him operate in tight spaces, you flash double teams, you fake double teams, you take the ball out of Darren Collison's hands, and you make guys like Ben McLemore pass it, Jason Thompson pass it. You try to keep the ball out of Rudy's hands, kind of force him to the perimeter. That's where he gets into trouble. And when you get good defenders with good defensive principles to make these guys think, that's where I think we'll see have they evolved or not.
No, I'm with you on that. I'd say in defense, again, just to play devil's advocate, the Kings are once again playing 4 and 5 basketball. They're getting absolutely nothing out of their shooting guard position. You know, everyone was excited on Wednesday night because McLemore had like a breakout game and he scored 10 points. 10 points and 7 rebounds. He doesn't play the passing lanes. He's hardly getting any steals at all. That's always been an issue with him as well. And just honestly, he's not ready to take on this job full time. And I think that's a major issue for the Sacramento Kings because I don't think Nick Stauskas is ready either. Stauskas, for some reason, you know, we've had this whole the whole Nick Stauskas, you know, people go at him because he's white thing. And then you start wondering, you're like, boy, is he just getting foul calls against him because he's white? And I'm just joking. But
it's funny. He got some of the worst foul calls I've seen in a while.
He had 3 fouls in a minute 33 on Monday night. And we're not talking about a 6'10" hack. We're not talking about Nurkic or whatever his name is, the big
Wow,
old
that guy is a
that.
league pass alert in the making.
Yeah, he's like, uh-oh, here he comes. He's about to beat somebody. I
The
mean, that's what I mean.
the
That's
best
just.
was DeMarcus did a spin move and dunked the ball, and the ball was through the net, and DeMarcus is running down to the other end of the court, and then Nurkic turned, or what? Nurkic turned like he
Nurkic.
was trying to cover him, and I'm like, whoa, man, you're slow.
What just happened? Yeah, but he does have some mobility. I think that's one thing he does have. They threw the kitchen sink at Cousins. At one point, Fareed was guarding him. I mean, they threw double and triple teams on him, and all he did was like spin baseline and dunk on them.
Yeah, well,
Uh,
Mozgov got so I think he was more pissed at his teammates because the guy's been beating him for two games,
yeah,
and I mean he's unstoppable. And there's two guys standing within 3 to 5 feet of him, and they're like, "I ain't going down there." And that's when he started just punching at DeMarcus
he
because
looked
he
like Don Piano from Sesame Street.
it
When he's trying to like do row 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 your boat and he can't get it, and then he starts banging his head on the piano. That's what
yeah
Mozgov looked like.
it was I so like I said, I don't count anything from the Denver game or Denver games at all. I think if you want the best, almost most accurate representation, you almost go back to that Golden State game where they were struggling a little bit because I think that's gonna kind of simulate the kind of tougher contests that they're gonna have, and you might be able to pick out some of the things that you think that they need to improve on some of the things we've already discussed. But I think just more, they've not been challenged yet, except for that first game,
I,
and,
I can
and
see that, but I mean, again, you have to play who's on your schedule, and it's not like the Sacramento Kings
I don't
just.
know, you take the 4-1 and you
Yeah,
run
yeah, it's
because
not like they just went to Philadelphia and then made a stop off and played the Knicks, and then played like Minnesota, and then that's not the road trip they just went on. I mean, they literally they had one of the toughest back to backs in the NBA, going from LA to Denver. The travel time. Okay, so you've got time change, and then there's a huge like trip out to where their stadium's at. So that was an issue. I mean, it's typically an issue. Malone held his starters and played them 22, 23 minutes, and they still beat them. And then they come back and they play the starters regular minutes and blow them out by 30. Basically by 30. I mean, that was a 36-point game at one point. So, I mean, you do have to say, look, they are playing NBA quality teams. Just are they playing? Are they getting a little bit lucky with who they're playing at the right time? I don't know. I mean, a couple of years ago, they had a stretch where every team they played against, their star was out. I remember, Carmelo was out, and every city they went to, it's like, oh, whoever the star of this team is out tonight, and the Kings still lost all those games. So again, it's an 82 game schedule. I think you take 4 wins wherever you can get it. Um,
Well, this
but
is this is also why the big teams, the big name teams are so good, and it's almost easy to pick out who's going to be in the finals every year because those teams are so much better than their counterparts. Every team in the league gets up for them, and conversely, every team that's come to Arco, or pardon me, Arco, listen to me, Sleep Train.
Arena.
I can't get Arco off the brain. Yeah, so every team that comes, I'd say there's a good 50% chance that that team is, for whatever reason, just not jacked up for the game. And I've seen players that are going for 20s and 10s, for 10 straight games come in and they'll get like a 10 and 5 for no reason. Now it's going to be different. They got these early headlines. It's going to be an interesting road trip. They catch a break with Oklahoma City. They'll get some players back, so it won't be as bad as some of these other games that Oklahoma's had to go through. But it's still going to be tough. We'll see. If they lose them all, they're still going to end up being 4-6. So I mean, that's better than what a lot of people thought going into the season.
No, 4-5. Yeah. Oh no. Yeah. 4-5. It's a 4 game road trip. So what is your guess? Phoenix, Oklahoma, Dallas, Memphis. How many wins?
Oh well, so I mean, I can't believe we've gone through the entire cast without even bringing up the Pizza Bowl. I mean, this
Yeah.
is
Oh
this
yeah.
is to me, it also makes sense that this team has jumped out so fast because there are a lot of people concerned with the perception of the Isaiah Thomas transaction over the summer. I
Yeah.
mean, the 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 spin that you hear, whether it's coming out of from the team or from the media, It's it's like they're talking about the guy, they're just not saying his name.
Yeah.
And even the players, I think DeMarcus's quote from your locker room roundup last night was like, "We're not thinking of any individuals over there. We're just worrying about ourselves." And I didn't get to hear the context of that, but I think Darren Collison knows what he's up against. I think Isaiah Thomas is
Darren
going to.
Collison, you should hear Darren Collison's quote from last night.
What did he have to
We
say?
we got this. He's
Yeah,
like, we're playing. He's like, I just faced Damian Lillard, Chris Paul, Ty Lawson, and Steph Curry. What else are you gonna throw at me?
well, if I'm not mistaken, those guys used to go at it in the Pac-10.
Yeah.
Not, I don't know a lot about that. I'm not a college guy, but like those two are going to go at it. I wouldn't be surprised if Hornacek kind of keeps the two apart so he can keep Isaiah's blood pressure from going through the roof. Um, I think there's going to be a lot on the line because the minute that Darren Collison did well, there was just this huge weight off of everybody's shoulders that they could talk about the offseason moves as a success. So that first game, I think there's a lot of emotional energy being spent, whether it's from the front office, from the players. So that's going to be a big one. And I couldn't call that game to save my life. You take the home team. I don't know. Kings are going to be jacked up. That's going to be a great Friday night game. I can't
It's two
think
very
of
contrasting teams, right?
Yeah.
It's like the great guard play against the great forward play. I mean, that's what it is. Clearly Jason Thompson isn't going to play that much in that game because they're going to run Omri Caspi and Rudy Gay at their shooters on the wings. But I mean, what do they do to stop DeMarcus Cousins? They can't stop DeMarcus Cousins.
They've got a really weak center crew. I mean,
Yeah.
Miles Plumlee is like, the other Plumlee, and we saw what DeMarcus did to the Mason Plumlee.
Yeah.
It's gonna. I mean, the one thing that the Suns have going for them is they have a slew of defenders. I'm not talking one. That's like 3 or 4 or 5 guys they can throw at Rudy Gay that have a great shot at doing well defensively against him. You could almost book it that Rudy's gonna have a bad game that night.
Really?
Yes, whether it's Markieff Morris, Marcus Morris, you could go PJ Tucker, you could throw Gerald Green on him. These guys can all move, and that might be the game where Rudy gets off his hinges. Collison versus Isaiah, that's gonna be must see TV. Collison versus any of the guards. This is
Yeah.
he has not faced great defensive guards. Ty Lawson's not a good defender.
Yeah.
Stephen Curry is a terrible defender. I don't care what they say. He's
No,
just not.
you're
He's
right.
not.
He hasn't faced a tough defensive guard. You're right.
Eric Bledsoe. He's going to be an interesting problem for Sacramento to face. But the trump card in it is DeMarcus Cousins because they will have to have one heck of a doubling scheme to be able to slow him down because those two centers are going to get snapped in half.
Oh yeah. They have no chance. They have no chance to stop him. All right, so let's skip forward. Sacramento Kings, still, we talked about Stauskas and McLemore a little bit, but they're getting really huge production out of Carl Landry and out of Omri Caspi. I think per 36, Carl's averaging 20.3 and 7 points a game, and per 36, Caspi's at 15.5, 7.4 rebounds, and 3.9 assists a game. They're both, again, Landry's got a PER of like 21.4. Caspi's almost 18 PER. These guys are really bringing a nice flow off the bench. And then on the flip side is Ramon Sessions, who, my goodness, I've never seen a player just fall apart like this. I mean, he's 2 of 17 from the field on the season. And he's 1 of 14 on 2-point attempts. This is a guy who goes at the basket and scores at the rim. What is going on with Ramon Sessions? And can this bench in this current form, can it survive?
Rayback time, baby.
Yeah.
Well, no, here's the problem, and it's been a problem for the Kings offense for years, is when you don't have shooters on the floor. Isaiah Thomas, Rudy Gay used to drive against 3 guys in the paint, 4 guys in the paint, sometimes 5 guys in the paint.
Yeah.
It's hard. So when you're playing like even a Carl Landry, he's not known for his range. He's going to be down there banging on the block, so he's in the paint. Reggie Evans, he's not leaving the paint and he's not spreading the floor. Um, they tried it. What I like about Malone is he keeps a star on the floor, so that's always good. But if it's DeMarcus Cousins, unless he's feeling like shooting, he's down in the paint. And Sessions, he doesn't have a great jump shot. It's definitely not off the dribble jump shot. And so he's just he needs, I think, if you can get Stauskas a little bit more comfortable. The problem with Stauskas is every time he gets on the floor, the other team just immediately goes at him every play. But
Yes.
you spread the floor with Stauskas, and Omri has done a great job, and he showed these signs of life in Houston, but for whatever reason, it was mostly a defensive issue, kind of a fit issue. But he showed these signs of life. He's that scrappy, rebounding, finger gun shooting.
Yeah, wasn't that awesome? Headband fixing, headband
Yes,
fixing.
and that's the thing. The chemistry on this team is, to me, it's almost used as a way to slight Isaiah. But if you take that out of the equation and just look at what is going on there, they do genuinely appear to be having fun.
Yeah, I'll say DeMarcus said that it's a lot more fun in the locker room. He told me the other day when I was in the locker room with him that the one thing that he really likes about Darren Collison is that it's positive reinforcement all the time. He's always coming over. He's always putting his arm on DeMarcus. He's always saying something positive to change the mood, and that it's sort of bubbling from the inside. Guys like Jason Thompson who have refused in the past to accept a role, all of a sudden that guy is shutting down every big man that he can possibly face. I mean, he just put the clamps on LaMarcus Aldridge. He put the clamps on Blake Griffin. He put the clamps on Kenneth Faried twice in a row. Kept the guy off the glass completely. I mean, Jason Thompson is accepting a role where in the past he was never willing to do it. I mean, Jason Thompson's PER on the season is so horrible. And I'll tell you this: if you have someone in there, the Kings aren't 4-1. His PER on the season is .2.
They say happy wife, happy life.
Yeah.
It's like happy boogie, something. I don't know what rhymes with boogie, but he's happy, it seems, and that trickle down effect, it just makes life incredibly easier because as well as I do that when he's unhappy, the whole world feels it.
Oh, he can be about as unpleasant as anyone that I've ever met in my entire life, not just in the NBA world. Yeah,
That's where
when he's unhappy, but he's been good. I mean, during the season, he and I have had a couple of conversations. He's been good, and he's also like the pressure is off him. He doesn't feel like it's just him. He's bought into the team concept. He's said let's not worry about, points per game, let's not worry about production. And I think what he gets is that wins are much more important than points per game or rebounds per game. Wins mean a lot more to MVP votes. They mean a lot more for All-Star voters, for all NBA voters than he's ever gonna. He could score 30 points and grab 15 rebounds a game, and there's still the potential that he would not make the All-Star team if the Kings were not a good team. And now I think he's realizing, like, look at all the acclaim he's getting. Everyone is talking about Boogie. Everyone is excited about him. And it's because the Kings are 4-1. It has nothing to do with the fact that he's averaging 24 and 10. Because, I mean, if they really want to look at it, his rebound numbers are down. He's fouling out of games left and right, and he's turning the ball over a substantial of 4 times a game. I mean, this isn't perfect, but everyone's excited about him because the Kings are 4-1, and I think he realizes that.
Well, and I was tripping on this the other night because you think of like what is the main reason that whatever is happening? What is the main reason the Kings appear to after 5 games in this small sample size of week 1 and week 2 that many people have gone down in flames describing? How does this all happen? Well, one, it happens when Jeff Petrie and the old Malone brother, or pardon me, Maloof brothers, draft this guy with all the red flags, and then more importantly, when Vivek threw his full weight behind the guy and said, "We're going to live and die with this guy."
Yep.
And once Cousins had that, there was a lot of healing, that needed to take place. There's a lot of turning it around. You got a big
Kumbaya moments.
exactly, and but that support and the commitment. Everybody's known for a while that whatever Boogie wants, Boogie gets. And speaking to your point about Darren Carlson as a positive reinforcer, maybe that's the story in a nutshell right there. That he needed somebody that might coddle him a little bit more. And when Cousins is kind of in the midst of his turnaround, let's say, and still having issues with whoever, media, locker room, whatever it is, and people are telling him, hey, this has to stop. Maybe somebody telling him that, hey, this has to stop wasn't the best way to handle DeMarcus Cousins. And Cousins is appreciating having the new guy who's really positive, giving him the ball a lot and, just generally kind of letting him be the man.
That's very possible. I'll also say this. I think the star of the week isn't Rudy Gay. It's not DeMarcus Cousins. To me, the star of the first week of this season is Michael Malone. Michael Malone has taken a patchwork group, players that he had no idea who they were really in Omri Caspi. He's got nothing out of Sessions. He's got nothing out of his shooting guards. His production, like points per game, like the offensive production out of Jason Thompson has not been there. And still, he's found a way to push all the right buttons. And he's got a big old long hook. As soon as something goes wrong, he pulls someone right out of the game. He has not missed, in my opinion, on his rotations one time.
No,
I think he's been spectacular.
This is the crazy thing is I hear whispers about the guy. I like if something if he doesn't win enough games, if it doesn't look good enough that maybe he's under pressure for his job. There would probably be at least 20 teams standing in line to grab that guy after the job he's done in Sacramento, and I nearly lost it. Was it last night? Gosh, the nights are starting to blur together. With a 30 some odd point lead, coaches lose it all the time, even in blowouts. They lose it. But the way he lost it, like, I swear to God, his cardiologist is like, dude, you got to chill out.
You got to chill. Yeah.
He was like really bothered by whatever happened.
Well, they gave up a lot of points in the fourth quarter, and they gave up a lot of points in the second quarter. I know he was unhappy about this. I'll say this, too. The one thing that people should because those rumors have been out there that there is a win total out there that's hiding that Malone has to win or he's going to be in line E at the unemployment line. But I don't think DeMarcus Cousins will allow that to happen.
No,
I think this is the first time that DeMarcus Cousins has 100%. He turned on Keith Smart at one point, and Keith Smart was done. Clearly, we saw what happened with Westfall. He was done. But I think this is a guy that he respects. It's a guy that's instilling some policies, some ways to treat people, to live, to be an NBA player, and he's instilling those into Cousins. And I think Cousins is listening, and he really, really respects Michael Malone. And I think Michael Malone's leash just got a whole lot longer with a 4-1 start, and with DeMarcus Cousins at his back, because that's what you have. You have a 6'11", 270-pound bodyguard if you're Michael Malone at this point. So, Aaron, we are running out of time. So I want to hit a couple of things before we go. We always show our NBA segment. What is going on with the Cleveland Cavaliers?
Oh, they're fighting. Like, LeBron's going in there, and he's going to be taking names. And what I thought was most interesting about it is he gave these guys enough rope to hang themselves. So in the game that everybody said he was disinterested in, and, he just kind of did that thing where he just kind of checks out. This time it wasn't in the playoffs, but he let the guys, Kyrie Irving and Deion Waiters, shoot themselves out of the game. Yeah. And he got them all together afterwards. They all had words. Apparently him and Kyrie had some words. And now come last night, or Wednesday night for your listeners, Kyrie Irving scored 35 points without an assist. And the early reports suggest that he almost went right back at LeBron and said, "Well, I'm going to play my game, and this is just who I am, and
Good luck with that.
take it or leave it type thing." And Dion Waiters has done that to a certain degree too, because they've told him, "We want you to be a catch and shoot player," and he's like, "I'm not a catch and shoot player," and they're like, "Well, you are now," and so they're going through the early stages of figuring it out. And Kyrie Irving's going to have to learn how to play off the ball. He's going to have to improve his defense. And, things are kind of catching up to him in that regard, because the guy that got kicked off of Team USA, Damian Lillard, torched him. And, the secret's out with him, and LeBron's not going to stand for it. So we'll see. I would say it's going to take 15 games tops for that to get cleared up, because there's not one player in the NBA that can affect change, with greater, effectiveness than LeBron James.
Yeah, Kyrie Irving's career assist percentage is 32.9 this season, 19.
Oof, man,
Yeah,
six
19.
assists. I think they've had 2 games like that in their history, and one of them was with all scrubs and no point guards or something.
Yeah. I mean, it's ugly. It's not pleasant at all. I mean, he hasn't had an assist. He's got 15 assists in 4 games. I mean, that's not going to cut it at all as a lead guard. Okay, lastly, fantasy. Where are we at? Who is our pick for this week? Last week you gave us...
I gave you an injured guy last week.
Yeah.
Which is not fair, because in Orlando they don't report injuries. It's not like the Cowbell Kingdom's on the case. It's, one local newspaper and I think a team reporter for NBA.com, and that is it. So they don't get to all the injuries. It's impossible for just one guy to do. You guys get to all the injuries, so you help out the fantasy owners quite well. This week, I'm going to give them KJ McDaniels, Mr. 3-and-D out of Philadelphia, the team known as the Sixers. They may or may not be a basketball team, but Mr. McDaniels can jump out of the gym, and as a shooting guard, he's probably going to get you somewhere between 1.5 and 2 blocks per game by the end of the year. He hits a couple threes. They're terrible. He's all they got going for them, minus a handful of other guys, but he's going to be playing 30 minutes a game by the end of the year. Run, don't walk. Pick up KJ McDaniels.
Interesting. That's a hot pick. I should just pick him up because my fantasy team is not doing well. Awesome. Well, Aaron, it's been a pleasure again. I think that's going to do it for this episode of the Cowbell Kingdom Podcast. Again, we would like to thank our sponsor. This podcast has been brought to you by Jiffy Lube. Jiffy Lube, fast and convenient automotive services with over 25 locations in the area. Visit them at jiffylubeka.com for coupons and locations today. We will also have a link in the podcast post to Jiffy Lube. Make sure you help our friends out there.
Can I add something? I go to the one in Alhambra.
Yep.
Those guys are great. They're like the best service in the world.
They are. They're great. And it is actually Jiffy, because I know that's the weird thing about oil changes lately. All of a sudden I've got to wait like an hour and 20 minutes for an oil change. And it's not like they really have a seating area at some of these places. And you're like sitting outside where like the employees smoke. And you're like, what exactly is going on here? Jiffy Lube is, the pro's pro. And that's why we're very happy to be affiliated with them. So, all right. That is going to do it for this episode of the Cowbell Kingdom Podcast. For Aaron Bruski, I am James Ham. We will be back next week with another guest and more Kings chatter as they are coming home from their 4-game road trip before we go to tape on Friday. Thank you for joining us on the Cowbell Kingdom Podcast.